Picture this, a quiet lab in St. Petersburg. It's the turn of the 20th century. You've got the clinking of glass tubes, the sound of dog paws on the floor, and right in the middle of it all, there's a man who had zero intention of becoming a psychologist, but somehow he ended up changing the entire field forever. Yep, we're talking about the one and only Ivan Pavlov.
And that, right there, is the big puzzle of his whole story. I mean, he was famous for thinking psychology was all dreamy, unscientific nonsense. So how in the world did he become one of its founding fathers? That's the paradox we're going to dive into.
So, Ivan Pavlov, born way back in 1849, was a trained physician. But his real passion? It was the stuff he could see and measure inside the body. The nitty-gritty mechanics, things like blood flow and digestion. He was not interested in fuzzy ideas about the mind.
This really gets to the heart of how he saw the world. On one side, you have physiology, his world. It's all about hard facts, things you can measure, actual data. But on the other side, you had psychology. At least back then, it was all about the unseen mind, feelings, abstract stuff. To a guy like Pavlov, that just wasn't science. And he stuck to his guns on this his entire life. Seriously, even after his work became the foundation for a whole branch of psychology, he refused a title. He'd insist, nope, I'm a physiologist, period. He studied things you could see, not things you could only think about.
So, okay, if he wasn't trying to study the mind, what was he up to? Well, his main focus was actually the work that won him the biggest prize in science, and totally by accident, it's what led him to the discovery that made him a household name.
Okay, let's go to the year 1904. This was a massive year for Pavlov. This is when he gets awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that for a scientist. But here's the twist, the thing that no one ever really talks about. His Nobel Prize had absolutely nothing to do with bells or learning or behavior. He won it for his super detailed, groundbreaking research on how the stomach works. Brilliant science for sure, but it's not the story we all remember.
It was right in the middle of this digestion research that he stumbled on something weird. He noticed his lab dogs would start to drool before they even got their food. The sound of an assistant's footsteps down the hall, or just the sight of a white lab coat. That was enough to get them salivating. Now, for most scientists, that's just a messy error. For Pavlov, it was a puzzle he had to solve.
So to figure out this mystery, Pavlov actually put his digestion work on hold. And what he designed next would become one of the most elegant, iconic experiments in the history of science. He decided he was going to try and create this weird reaction on purpose. And his process was so methodical. First, he'd take a neutral sound, like a bell. He'd ring it, and of course nothing happened. Then he started pairing that bell with food, which naturally makes a dog salivate. He did this over and over and over again. An association started to form in the dog's brain. And then came the magic moment. He rang the bell without any food, and the dog started to salivate. Just like that, a totally meaningless sound had become a powerful, meaningful trigger.
And with that one experiment, he had discovered what we now call classical conditioning. He proved, with hard data, that the brain automatically learns to connect things. For a guy who thought the mind was dreamy nonsense, he had just unlocked one of its most fundamental secrets: how our physical bodies learn from experience.
So the experiment itself became totally legendary. But what about the man who ran it? Well, this intense, kind of eccentric scientist and his accidental discovery are still shaping our world today in ways you probably don't even realize.
Pavlov's lab was apparently a place of extreme discipline. All the clocks were synchronized down to the second, and you had to be absolutely silent during experiments. But he wasn't a monster to his test subjects. He had this huge amount of respect for his dogs, made sure they were always well cared for, almost like they were his partners in research.
And you can really see his affection for his canine colleagues in his own words. Despite that really stern, scientific exterior, it's pretty clear he felt a deep connection to them.
So why does any of this matter to you and me? Well, Pavlov's work is literally everywhere. It helps us understand how we learn fears and phobias. It explains why habits and addictions are so tough to break. It's even the reason why a catchy commercial jingle makes you instantly think of a product. It's the basic science of how we connect the dots in our world.
And the wildest part of it all, this world-changing idea came from a guy who couldn't stand psychology, a man who really just wanted to figure out how stomachs work. It's a true story of accidental genius, all thanks to him paying attention to a weird little detail in his lab.
At the end of the day, Pavlov's discovery wasn't just about dogs. It was about all of us, about the hidden wiring in our own brains. Which kind of leads to a final question for you to think about. What are the unnoticed signals in your environment, the sounds, the smells, the sights, that trigger an automatic response in you? What bells in your own life are you responding to?